podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Old Head Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you can please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Raji.
Man, so, well, my voice is almost back to normal, but still a little raspy. And, unfortunately, a topic that we've had to discuss in this forum, and unfortunately will more than likely continue to have to discuss, a young man by the name of Tyre Nichols was brutally murdered by 5 Memphis police officers who, were African-American. I think it's an important footnote just because the nature of our conversation about this is sometimes it's about race, but it's about race and power in a way that can obscure, even what I think we've said in this space before is that it's not just police violence, and as it pertains to the inordinate nature that Black folks and Black men particularly could, realistically expect to find themselves on the wrong side of a supposed action to either protect the public safety or to resolve some crime or to investigate something or not be complying, and find themselves savagely beaten and, hopefully survive. But in this case, this young man did not. He succumbed to his wounds 3 days later. And it leaves the back to the thing in the moment of why, right? Like, why was this, even necessary? It's, and all other things. So unfortunately, that's where we need to start today, because I think it is still, I think every time it happens, if we have the space to say something, we should still make space to say something, and even to the degree of our own capacity to maintain our humanity in terms of grieving. I didn't know that man personally in any way, but he could have been somebody I knew. He could have been someone that I knew, that I know knew. So yeah. So I hope that's where I wanted to start, and then I give space to you to say a word or two, and then we'll add on.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about variations of these things so much, right? Like the fact that we constantly kind of return to some element of this when we talk about police violence against residents. I mean, and I think it's important for us to think about that. We often look at other countries and talk about the atrocities that are happening, and we talk about the human rights violations that happen, right? We talk about, human rights violations that, are happening in Iran. Some of them that happen in Russia, right? We talk about the human rights violations that happens in the countries all across the world. What we see is a human rights violation. We are seeing someone's human rights violated by actors who are representatives of the state. And we shouldn't minimize what that means. We can become so used to this, we don't remember that these people are state representatives. And a person whose crime may have been driving erratically on the wrong side of the highway didn't get home that night. And I think it's important for us just to deal with, like, are we okay with the fact that you could make a mistake and drive erratically, and that could be a reason that you die by the hands of actors of the state, right? Not another person, and we can get to that in a second, but not that. By people who are supposed to, quote unquote, serve and protect. And I think we have to rip the wound off and recognize that we have human rights violations that are repeatedly happening by actors of the state, with all Americans actually, but specifically with one particular group of people, one particular segment of people, Black men. And obviously, since the murder of George Floyd, we look at the confluence of race and policing and white supremacy. And I just want to say that this is when you see white supremacy and power manifest itself through other actors. Mm-hmm. Everybody hates Black people, even some Black people. Mm-hmm. When you have a system that robs you of your humanity, so you rob someone of their life because they ran from you. I want to say it in this way, in the traditional kind of Black way. Who the fuck are you to rob someone of their lives because they actually got away from you? Mm-hmm. Like, let's posit what occurred just like that. You killed a man because he got away from you when you tased him. So, I just think this one was actually really challenging for me. Now, I mean, we've seen, Boys in the Hood in 1990 showed a Black man taking advantage of his role as an actor of the state to harm other Black people, right? Mm-hmm. That was 32 years ago on film. Mm-hmm. So we don't have any confusion about this, right? So it's culture. It's not, as we would say, wisdom. It's culture. Mm-hmm. This is a culture that it doesn't matter your race, you can still act in a way that's harmful to Black people. Yeah. So, I just want us to step back and acknowledge that these are human rights violations that are perpetually, and I can use that term actually, perpetually happening to a particular group of people. And in any other world, the world court or someone should investigate why a particular group of people are being harmed by actors of the state at this clip.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me that when something is systemic and structural in nature and exists within what's been embedded in process, right? That it is a reasonable process to stop people, right? Again, people who may have been driving erratically or tail light or whatever thing, and then go on an expedition within that stop to find something out that may be illegal or may not. We don't know. But the idea that it is a reasonable possible outcome that you would need to use violence, to make them comply, with your thing you're doing. And then that a reasonable outcome of that is that, for everyone should know, the challenge with violence is that you can't necessarily control how the end will come. Once you get into, as a regular, day-to-day person, if you get into it with somebody at the Walmart because you bump their cart accidentally or, something, and y'all start to tussle, someone could end up with a serious, grave injury or not return home due to that. And anyone who would, participate in violence, sometimes we can escape our sense of the possible outcomes. But everyone should know, and if anyone ever is trained in any serious level of martial arts, that Yeah, any particular altercation could actually end in you or the person you're having an altercation with not making it. And therefore, let's be wise. Is the altercation worth whatever the infraction was, so to speak? So we have a system that trains people. We come up with the name of these special units, and you know, I'm almost positive they started with Scorpion and then worked their way backwards. You know what I'm saying? They didn't say we gotta use all these words in the work that we're doing, and then it's like Scorpion. I'm sure they started with Scorpion and then said, how can we make an acronym out of this? Because we want to be a predator with a stinger to let the criminals know we're serious. Right? Like this happens and no one bats an eye. Right now, I know there's some people they may feel like it's like it's like it's like on TV when you see the Mod Squad or the whatever. We got 50, 60 years of TV cops, where some kind of unit and the bad guys and so you send these people out on a mission that is saying that that you can assume that people that you stop are dangerous and should be treated with the highest level of prejudice, so to speak. And so color me not surprised, right? Like if you think it's okay to beat someone to comply, then you don't know where to live. You don't know when to stop. The idea that even with this one that that other officers thought this was too far. I don't know. It all is heartbreaking to me, because like I would find it hard to believe that assortment of officers and other officers related to that, and just officers in general in that area, had not beat people before. That may have been considered justified, for whatever reasons or under the court but I'm on like you don't do what they did, and it's the first time you put your hands on somebody like that you tase someone multiple times like that. And I don't know if I doubt. I don't have trust. I should say I'm going to speak from where my pain is at. I don't have trust that most folks within that system, folks who are not attached to that system, will understand why. Like, well, you live in this state. Why are you concerned what happened in Memphis? I'm like, because how do I know the officers where I live don't think the same thing? Like, I have good reason to be fearful, to be worried. I have good reason to be concerned that my son driving on his own, doing the work that he's doing, might drive into a town where someone assumes something about him. And he might be in a stressed state and have other stuff on his mind, make a bad choice in terms of his communication. It's not a reasonable outcome that he would not return home. And I think it's important that other folks tap into that sense of humanity that like ultimately all this happened. This man lost his life. His son will not have his father, his mother and his parents and anyone else that knew and loved him will not get to see him again for no publicly good reason. And the state is a responsible actor in his death.
And that's why I wanted to say that earlier, that when people, this could be a social worker, this is an officer, this is a variety of things. You take the responsibility of representing the state when you take a job. And no one likes to think this. But there was, I would argue, traditionally was a contract that assumed that you would have the highest element of like humanity, right? Mm-hmm. We've talked about that fact that until a certain point, there was this compact with teachers and law enforcement officers. Mm-hmm. That everyone assumed that like the reason you were given a whole bunch of leeway and paid really well was because you were doing God's work and and like you were going to hold yourself with the highest standard. Your point about, again, in the loops with mine to add on, there are groups of people who have these fears. There are other people who don't have the fear. Mm-hmm. Right? Like they don't have the fear that your child may not return home. And I want to tie it to something else. In segments of our community, and I think and sometimes there are really good reasons, just depending on what level of fear people are living under. We talk about self-hate, and we talk about self-hate often like in the Black community, that we know kind of shows itself via intra-community crime, right? And, people who, for reasons that, we may not agree with, understand, seem antisocial, are harming each other at, again, an alarming rate. And we talk about the self-hate, right? And we talk about the reason that these people need to rid themselves of self-hate and, PTSD and de jure segregation and all the things we talk about, right? And that's the thing. We need to look at these 5 Black men as exhibiting the same degree of self-hate. Mm-hmm. They can't get a pass because they went to college. They can't get a pass because they were part of a fraternity. They can't get a pass because they got riled up and made a mistake. You don't make that kind of mistake, just like there are other things we look at and say, how could you shoot into that house? How could you not know who was in the house and shoot in the house, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair. But you as a state actor dealing with someone who looks like you with that level of that lack of mercy, right? Let's be clear, you were a ticking time bomb. Mm-hmm. In the same manner that we talk about other people who commit crimes. Mm-hmm. And they need to be put on the same level. Ain't no separation. We're not doing that because they had jobs and went to college, man. And that's a class thing in our community. And that's why I said
absolutely.
Even other Black people hate Black people. Because here's the reality. If five of them ran into 4 dudes in suits, or 5 of them ran into some street dudes that had another kind of context, that very well may or may not happen. So there's a class perspective to what occurred as well that we have to constantly be engaging in. It's one of the things that you have to make, race obviously is the one filament that runs through American systems in its most profound state. However, class, self-hate, white supremacy influence even how race intertwines both, again, in community violence and in the same time in state-sponsored violence. As you try, if we suppose you were trying to make a community safer by beating the shit out of somebody because they didn't roll over on their stomach.
I'm gonna attempt to frame something because I think we have a clear picture, I'm saying we as in me and you, us two, of when we think of the concept of self-hate, right? Like what those symptoms look like in practice, right? Whether it be you always got something negative to say about either yourself or folks like you in some aggregate sense. So if something happens, I'll just use one example because I actually wonder how damaged this man is, but Jason, I'm gonna say his name just because y'all should know he's a sucker. Pardon me. My body don't even they gotta say this man name. Jason Whitlock, to find a clip of this man asserting the idea that the violence portrayed and for the record, I'm not watching the video. I trust what y'all told me is happening. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see any more of these if I don't have to see them. But to go on someone's television program and assert that all of the Black men involved were behaving the way they behaved because you think they were raised by single Black women. And to just go outside and say that, right? That's a clear symptom that something is unhealthy and rotten inside of you, right? Now that's a big out here one. You display a disdain or an avoidance of being with and around either black folks in an aggregate. This is me thinking of self-hate from as a black man that's thinking about me, not other people, and their forms of self-hate. You maybe avoid very specific, maybe the only context you hang out with black folks is your like black church folks or other religious spiritual space, or your professional space black folks, because again, that class line, right, where you go like, oh well, they're professionals though, they went to college, they got degrees and stuff, they're not like those other ones, or whatever the line of demarcation. I think in other communities, as an external observer, it shows up in different ways, right, where maybe you don't you have a family member who's maybe a little bit more forward in their display or sharing of racism, or racist tropes, in terms of, and so then you don't want to hang out with that family member, but you still hang out with them, but you try not to hang out with them because they're going to say something, but you don't really, maybe have the language to challenge them, so you just sort of try to like avoid them, or the self-deprecation, which is a prominent feature of the American comedy, particularly at least for a time, of white comics, of sort of going like, yeah, like, I'm a terrible person, like, and it's kind of, you exist in a society that gives you that has all these privileges and advantages, but you can only focus on what you don't have, which is, a weird thing to watch sometimes. Like, you seem to be doing okay. You have a whole comedy routine about how terrible you are, but you're on TV every day and you make millions of dollars. Maybe not millions, but in the thousands, right? Like these sort of aspects of a lack of care or love for yourself. So I'm hoping other folks to push them that maybe not in our community, because like I said, we have a very structured idea that we have to deal with as a factor of becoming healthy within a society that constantly messages to us negatively, where other people, I think, they may not recognize their structures of self-hate. You know what I'm saying? But they may pawn them off to other parts of the sense of who they are, and go like, oh no, that's not self-hate, that's just being sad, or that's just being depressed. It's like, no, you don't actually love yourself. You've ingested some negative things about yourself that maybe are not actually founded. But the point I was trying to get to with that was, when you mix almost a sense that you can better the hate that you may have for yourself, or the lack of love, maybe even a better way to say that, you can use your power and position to prove to yourself your higher level of worthiness, that you can use your removing compassion and human, respect for humanity from the other, to show and prove your value and worth, right? As you can be rewarded, for your, virulent, deplorable, just disgusting level of viciousness, and fresh off of a trip to, the Whitney Plantation and a couple other things at the top of this year. So it's present in my mind, like, besides I've been doing some writing and working around this, like the way violence shows up in our society, and how violent a society we have a history of having, but how we obscure it. And and when this event is just a tragic, and but unfortunately predictable, occurrence. And my wish, my will would be for folks to be moved to ask harder, deeper questions about what we're trying to do here. And in all things, show compassion to Tyre Nichols' family, and make space for them to hopefully get what they need to move forward in the world. So that's, I don't know. That's probably where I should stop.
Yeah, and so I want to say something. It's not nowhere as deep as that.
Indeed.
I want to say something to the world of folks on social media as they listen. If you don't want to watch the video, like you said, you didn't watch the video, and I didn't watch the video, right? outside of a very small clip, just because it doesn't. I don't have to watch it to see how savage it was to frame that he's dead. Frankly, right? Like if I might have watched it if he alive, but I'm not watching it. He's gone. Doesn't matter how bad it was. If you're not going to watch it, don't watch it. If you're not going to watch it and you want to share with people not to watch it, that's fine. But I think a more long-term solution is to work with people to discuss humanity, so that you don't have to shame people into not watching it when the thing happens.
Yeah.
By then saying, "Oh shit, I ain't watching it. You better not neither." Obviously, all the research is in about PTSD, repeated watching. So, all the science is in. Like, we don't debate that. But if you try to solve a cultural problem at the point of entry every time, never be surprised that you continue to have a cultural problem.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because you're always solving it at the point of entry.
Yeah.
You always say, don't go in and act like that. Well, you should have said that shit before we got here, right? Like, as a mom, black mom, particularly, don't you go and act like that.
Right.
Wait, we just got to the door. You should have told me that before I left the house. I might not have came.
Right. I'm not even prepared. I could have came up with some strategies to not act the fool, but
you asking me to hold it in right now when I might have, I'm about to have fun in here. I'm about to grab toys and shit. You better have been grabbing nothing and put it in the case, put it in the shop.
In the cart, right. Don't put nothing in this cart.
So, but it is the like it's the big version of the point of trying to resolve cultural trauma at the point of entry.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we need to work with each other broadly, right? How do we have more of a, as we would look at it, civilized discourse about a whole host of things that maybe you shouldn't watch?
Mm-hmm.
So that when things occur, everyone that goes, I'm not watching it. And they don't have to tell nobody. Because guess what? They're not watching it.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like the whole like boycott versus like, trust me, there are some communities, if something happens and they're harmed, they're going to take action. They're not going to tell you they took action.
Right.
But action will be taken.
Yeah.
And some,
way.
Yeah. And so I think, it's important to let people know and lead and say, hey, I'm not going to watch it, but I think it's also better to make sure we have a broader discourse that advocates that. So, that's the thing about that as a transition.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, looking at the time, I think it might be best we just,
I think next week. Yeah, I think next week the idea to talk about the other thing, because I do think there's also like there's a culture around how these things occur now. The culture has shifted recently. Obviously, I think if you were to look at over the last like 5 to 10 years, of people who have been murdered by actors of the state, I don't want to keep saying it like that. The perspective of someone being right or wrong has shifted greatly. The ecosystem of it has shifted greatly, and I think the people who respond to it has shifted as well. So, next time we'll kind of tap into that. But like in any ecosystem, the question always must be asked: who is it working for, and who is it working against?
Yeah, and
not to assume that a system that worked for someone yesterday, frankly, actually works for them today.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But real on a light tip,
who
you got in the games today?
I think, I actually think I think the 1 seeds are both going to win. I think actually, and I might be wrong. I think there's a chance that the Eagles slowly blow the 49ers doors off. Like it's sort of close, and then late at the end of the game, like, oh no, the Eagles 31, 49ers 17, or like, you know what I'm saying, or like 13, like, you know what I'm saying, just because I feel, I'm a Giants fan. I knew I was pretty confident we was gonna get our doors blown off. I was like, maybe we'll hang in there a little bit. We'll get some points. Like, but I knew our defense wasn't gonna be able to stop what the Eagles is doing on their side of the ball, on the offense side. So I was like, maybe we could at least scrap out some, some scores. I think that folks actually are underestimating how good the Eagles are. And as you know, I don't want to talk nice about the Eagles. I mean, I'm just keeping it real. But as a man who respects your adversary, you know what I'm saying? You go, hey man, look, y'all been one of the best run organizations in the NFL since Laurie took over or whatever when they bought him, what 99 or whatever.
Absolutely.
And like from the product on the field level, for sure, like they only got the one Super Bowl to show for that time, which I mean, actually, is not unheard of. It's like I think it's more than half the league has never won a Super Bowl. Actually, way more than half. It's like a third of the league has never won a Super Bowl. But so I've watched them even years when it's like, man, they ain't that good. But actually, man, they got that guy's good. That player's good. Man, they're pretty damn competitive for a team that ain't as good, maybe as fill in the blank other team. So that you know, credit to Kyle Shanahan and his capacity to structure a situation where a dude who I don't think, maybe he really is like this gem that everyone missed and, he should have been drafted earlier. You know, great run. I'm happy for them, but I think that the Eagles are going to win. And, Mahomes is been to 5 straight AFC championship games. And everyone keeps trying to convince us that like somehow he's losing it. You know what I'm saying? And he's been to 5 straight. Like so since he started starting, no one else, everybody got to play him just about in the last game to get to the Super Bowl. Play his team. That doesn't normally happen. That doesn't happen in NFL history. Like like I said, the Eagles, oddly enough, in that run in the early part of the 2000s when they went, I think, with 4 straight, they only got through one. That's an achievement. That doesn't happen all the time. Like that doesn't I mean, outside of like
you know what it is? I think we've gotten numbed. I mean, obviously this is a way goofier way to talk about numbness, but I think we've all gotten the Tom Brady effect numbed us all to like the fact that some of this shit doesn't really happen. Like Tom Brady and LeBron started making us real comfortable with the fact that like there's people who are going to kind of repeat behaviors that generally speaking are not repeatable.
Yeah.
And so we obscure when other people do it now. Because now it's almost like, okay, well, that's cool, Mahomes, but you didn't win 6 rings.
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying? Like
right.
versus like, wait, that's not Tom Brady doing that. That's almost like telling someone just because they scored 70 didn't matter because Wilt had 100. Like,
it's
like we have to kind of appreciate the talent for what it is. I mean, so in the AFC, because I live in a AFC town, Mahomes being healthy. If Mahomes is 60 to 70%, I'm with the Chiefs. We'll never know how impactful Joe Burrow may be. I mean, I think Joe Burrow also kind of suffers from the fact that he's playing in a conference with Mahomes, Josh Allen, maybe Lamar Jackson. But the kid don't have no fear.
Yeah, and I dig the guy. Just for the record.
Yeah, he's definitely the white kid that knew how to do the dance early. He watched John Beatty how to get that good shape up. But so yeah, I mean, I generally don't bet against Mahomes. But I don't know if he's, again, no one's 100%. That's the other thing about playoffs, right? Everyone's like, is someone hurt? Everyone's hurt.
Yeah.
It's a barbaric sport. I want everyone to know it's a barbaric sport where people
people get hurt and then they like wrap tape around something and go, don't be, I'm going to still play. Like it's fine. Like, break bones and keep playing if you can.
Yeah, like everyone's hurt. But yeah, I'll take Mahomes. And then I take the Eagles only because I think that the system The system is that good, and I think the 49ers can beat almost everybody else because of they just have an awesome defense and a serviceable offense, right? Like it's plug and play. It's kind of like we clearly see it doesn't really matter who you are. You can play quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers football team
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
reasonably good.
Yeah. You know, my only reservation would be for the Eagles if the Eagles, you know, if they have if they turn the ball over multiple times would be the gateway for the 49ers to win. I just don't buy that they will that I don't buy that the 49ers offense, despite how talented they are, you know, and they have some significantly fantastic skilled players. You know, I think even if you watch the game last week with the Cowboys, those short fields that those turnovers produced allowed for the point. They only scored 19 points. And that's the best defense the 49ers have played in like a while. Like they haven't played a murderer's row of defensive talent.
Right.
Most of the season. You know, now I know I also just, you know, push away from, there's a thing, you know, you hang out with people that love football, they'll go, but your team hasn't played anybody. Like that's but the reality is they all played NFL teams. These are the only ones that are available. You can't, you know, it's not like you know, oh, well, you know, you didn't play them, but they're not really good. It's like, no, you played, you know, you played NFL teams. Those are all NFL athletes out there. They all like lift weights and do push-ups and stuff and like do things, and they put heart monitors on them and they check their speed levels. And you know what I'm saying? Like those are all folks that could make it into a very small pool of athletic performance. So no, they weren't the best teams, but that's, you know, that's another part of the trick of the product is, you know, some of these teams are never going to win. And, you know, you got to keep paying for it. You know, I mean, at least some people, I watch on television. I don't be paying at the stadium, but I'm just saying it's a weird dynamic. So, you know, now I could see a world, I could see if Mahomes is really hobbled and they're not able to, you know, to get the ball out the air anyway, I can see a world where the Bengals win. I just think I don't know. I think my homeboy, as some people say, is you know, he's probably tired of hearing people say, "Oh, they've lost to the Bengals 3 times in a row," and maybe Joe Burrow's. You know, if any of that psychological stuff matters, I feel like he's somewhere like let me show them what time it is. What's on what what a TI is, as they would say. But it should be fun. We'll see.
Yeah, so we'll talk next time and see who the hell won. So,
yeah, we'll see who won. You know what I'm saying? The Good Brothers Super Bowl special.
That's right. That's right. I know y'all can't wait. The Good Brothers Super Bowl special where we talk about all the other shit that the NFL does instead of the actual game.
Right, like, and Rihanna's performing. I mean, we can do, you know, what's Rihanna going to do at the halftime show? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? We can talk about that. But man, appreciate you. Got anything else for me depart for the week?
Nah, man, stop social media shaming people and realize that this stuff is not okay. I don't know. I'm not going to bring it down after we just were talking about.
Yeah, we just had a little bit of levity, but yeah, let's everybody.
Shit's not okay, man.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Shit's not okay. Indeed. Enjoy your Sunday.
Indeed. And with that, we say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, Majestic. Good Brothers is part of the Ash Your Old Head podcast, and I try to record these regularly, weekly. Sometimes we make it, sometimes we don't. You know, due to the nature and the seriousness of today's conversation, please, you know, do what you can do something kind for someone. If there's any way to support the Nichols family, you know, I think that would be the way to go. And let's just see if we can get to a better society. You know, all the regular stuff about how to support the podcast. You know what to do. Listen to the podcast, share the podcast, rate, subscribe to the podcast. I'm not going to give all the rest of that today. So just be positive. Try to find some peace. Stay sharp. Peace.